Welcome to this week of Virtual Chapel. Nice to see you again, and thank you for all the lovely feedback from last week, the 6 words. I wonder if you thought about what your 6 words would be to describe you. Well, today I want to talk about one of the stories after Easter. It's a big flame, isn't it? And one of the stories after Easter. You may remember, if you were at Bethany last year, that I cooked an omelette in chapel. Do you remember? And I wonder if you can remember, you probably remember the smell, hopefully. Beautiful smell, and some of you afterwards came up for another breakfast after chapel. But you may well remember the story. It's the story of Jesus cooking breakfast on the beach, and this is my little barbecue here. It's one of the stories that's after Easter. The disciples have gone back to their old lives and back to their homes on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And they've gone back to their fishing boats. Remember, we hear lots of stories about them in their fishing boats, calming the storm, and lots of stories about them as fishermen. And in the story, we join them after they've had a really bad night's fishing. Now, these were expert fishermen. They knew how to fish. And this night they'd caught absolutely nothing. Nothing. Not even a small, tiny fish. And in the story, the risen Jesus shows up and he turns this miserable fishing expedition, this journey for them, into an encounter like no other. A breakfast on the beach like no other. Jesus lights a fire. And they see this person on the shoreline cooking. So the disciples, they're out in their boat and they realise that Jesus is standing on the shore. And they hear a splash, and Peter, who is over the side of the boat, he puts some of his clothes on first, we hear in the story. As most in those days, they probably wouldn't have had lots of clothes on to fish because it was a hard physical task. And so fully clothed, he swims to the shore because he's sure that it's Jesus, and he is so excited. And on the shore is a fire. Now I want you to imagine at this point that you're Peter. As your feet hit the stones, the little pebbles, you know, like when you try and get out of the sea, perhaps when you're on holiday, or perhaps when you go to the seaside here and you go for a little paddle and you know the pebbles on the feet, you smell the smoke from this fire. They've been fishing since really, really early in the morning, and they will be hungry. And I love the smell of a barbecue, don't you? Because it just makes you think, oh yes, I'm going to eat soon. Jesus has been up early and he's prepared something for them. A fire made of charcoal. And in John's Gospel, when he tells us about the charcoal, he tells us for a reason. Now I wonder if you can't smell this at this point, but you probably will be able to, in your mind, think about the smell of a barbecue. I wonder what barbecues that smell of charcoal brings to you. Is it kind of summer evenings, a bit like we've been having? Maybe you've had a barbecue over the weekend. Maybe it's that source of warmth, when you have a fire at home and you think about the coal that they put on the fire. But for one person sitting on the beach, it brought back some painful memories. The smell of the charcoal, actually for Peter, would have suddenly made him think about something really painful. Not a good memory, a bad one. And the word for charcoal that John in his Gospel uses here on the beach with Jesus is only used at one other point in the Gospel stories. And it's earlier on in the story. The word for it is anthrachia, and for charcoal it's only used twice, and it's used when Jesus lights this fire, but also when Peter denies Jesus. And that's deliberate. You know, sometimes you think, oh wow, you know when you're reading something in English and the writer has made you think about something that happened earlier in the book. That's what's happening here, because for Peter the smell would have reminded him of when he denies Jesus. And it's that same fire, the same word used. 3 times Peter denied that he knew Jesus, and yet he'd promised to be his best friend forever. And I wonder if when Peter smells this fire on the beach, he thinks, oh no, I let Jesus down, my best friend. So for Peter, that fire might have smelt a bit like betrayal. I wonder if you can think about the times when you've kept silent when you should have spoken up for someone. Perhaps the times where you should have said something, where you shouldn't have said, no, I don't know anything about it, but perhaps you should have stood up for the person. Perhaps there's times where you haven't done as Jesus wanted you to do, if you have a faith too. Perhaps there's times where you've made choices that aren't motivated by good things, by love. Or perhaps there's times where you've pursued an ambition that was unwise or unkind to someone else. And I wonder sometimes, are we much different than Peter? Well, if you feel like Peter a bit as you watch this chapel, then you're in good company. And the great news is that to Jesus just loved Peter. And Jesus then gave Peter the biggest mission to build his church. Incredible. Peter's betrayal, Jesus didn't hold that against him. He gave Peter an amazing task. So if you feel a little bit like that about something, just remember that Jesus doesn't see you like that at all. So when we meet Jesus each morning, after another day, perhaps the day before of ups and downs, and perhaps as isolation now really kicks in, whether we're with people and we're kind of finding it hard sometimes to be amongst the people that we love, and we all say things, don't we, at times, or we all do things. Perhaps we bring those things to Jesus and say sorry, and then we can make them right with the people around us. Or maybe there's something that over this time you thought, oh, I've held that grudge for years. I've been cross with that person for years. And maybe now is the time to put that right. Jesus gives Peter a chance to put it right. He asks him, actually. Peter denies Jesus before the crucifixion 3 times. Jesus afterwards asks him 3 times, do you love me? He gives him 3 times just to put it right. And then he asks Peter to build his church. And look what happened. Incredible what happened after that. So Jesus has got the fire going, and he's also got bread. And he took bread, and in the story it tells us that he took bread, he broke the bread, and he gave it to them. Now in chapel that time, I passed some bread around and everyone was, oh wow, this smells delicious and this is fantastic. And I wonder what you think of when you smell bread. Has anyone made any bread during lockdown? There's been a lot of bread making going on, I think, because there's loads of, you can't get flour anywhere. So lots of people, I think, have been making bread, or perhaps cake. We've had a lot of cake as well. Well, I wonder if the bread, Jesus breaking the bread on the beach after he'd risen from the dead, reminded them of that meal that they shared together where he broke bread with them and said, this is my body given for you. And I wonder if when they're on the beach around that fire, this is really lovely and warm now, really lovely and warm, they would have seen that bread broken and they would have remembered what Jesus did for them. When Jesus said to them, we break this bread so that you will remember that I'm doing this, what I'm about to do, about to die and rise again, I've done for you. Perhaps it reminds us of a time where Jesus took all that brokenness, all that was wrong in the world, and made it right. And then fish. I haven't got any fish to show you today. I'm very sorry. I had some bacon, but that doesn't work. That's not in the story at all. Fish. Of course, they'd let their nets down and they'd caught nothing all night. And now Jesus had said to them in the story, cast your net on the other side. And there's this non-fisherman telling these fishermen who knew knew what life was about, telling them how to do their job. And actually, they caught a bountiful amount of fish. And so on that fire that's ready, this is ready now to cook on, they'd put that fish for the most amazing breakfast ever. And there's Jesus on the beach, barbecuing fish. Well, I didn't pass fish around the chapel that morning, did I? That wouldn't have been so nice. But I wonder what you smell of. Have you had like sardines on a barbecue or fish on a barbecue? It smells amazing, doesn't it? And I wonder if it reminded them of the story a few months before where Jesus had made a small amount of fish feed 5,000 people. And I wonder if just cooking fish on this wonderful fire, that great breakfast that morning, reminded them that Jesus has everything for them. And that when they come to Jesus with the little that they have, he can make it amazing. Just like that miraculous catch of fish, just like the 5,000 fed from a small boy's picnic lunch, Jesus can provide everything they need. And I wonder if this lesson of just cooking, Jesus just cooking a barbecue for them, breakfast, bread and fish, would have reminded them about how God provides for them. They'd experienced real loss. They'd experienced real fear. They'd let God down. They'd said things they shouldn't have said. They'd run away from God. They were frightened. And there's Jesus shows up with this wonderful barbecue and shows them that he's alive, that he's defeated death, that he loves them, that he has a mission for them, and that he has plenty and amazing things for them. And so this week, as you think, and maybe as you watch this chapel this week, and maybe you think about your 6 words, maybe you apply them to what God has for you this week. Put something right with someone and think about how God might use your life in the few days ahead, in the weeks ahead, in the months ahead, to do something amazing for him, because he has everything for you. God bless you this week ahead.